once again, good morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are around the planet. Thanks for tuning in to today's webinar. This is, I think, going to be a really interesting and exciting one where we are we're diving deep into the well performance rating. So to get started, we'll have some short introductions. So if you could just get the next slide. My name is Liam Bates. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kytera. My focus is really on everything air quality and strong focus on product. So air quality is what I live and breathe, and very excited to talk to everyone about this today. We're super lucky to be joined by Eric Sun, who is the Air and Thermal Comfort Concept Lead at the IWI, the International Well Building Institute. I've known Eric for many years in different corners of the world, and we've run into each other at many different places throughout the years. And Eric is definitely an expert when it comes to everything air quality, thermal comfort, continuous monitoring. We've had the chance to work together on a couple of the advisory boards at the IWI. So we've spent a lot of time talking about sensors, various technologies, and really excited to have him online today to dig through some of the details of the performance rating. So yeah, first of all, welcome Eric.
Thank you, Liam. Great to be part of this this call today. I see some familiar names already on the attendee list, but also a pleasure to be working with you and your team, and always just talking informally and formally. I've known you for what, 7-8 years now.
A while.
In China. Yeah, right when I was still working in China, but since I've moved back to LA. But great to be part of the call and talk to you all about continuous sensors and what we've done with well performance rating and the well building standard.
Yeah, awesome. So just some housekeeping to get out of the way. This webinar is live and it is being recorded. It will also be available on demand afterwards. We're trying to keep this to around 35-40 minutes worth of presentation, where we'll be talking about the performance rating. And then afterwards, there's going to be a 10-minute Q&A session. If you've got questions at any point, you can go to the Q&A tab in Zoom, and you'll be able to put the questions in there. We'll be addressing all those at the end. Try to get through as many as we can within the time that we have. Next slide. Perfect. So just a quick intro to Kytera. We're super excited to be hosting this webinar today. Bit of background on the company. Our focus is really on helping companies improve their indoor spaces, both when it comes to health and well-being of the occupants inside, but also from a sustainability perspective. So we make hardware physical devices like the one that you see on that slide sitting on the wall there to help you monitor and measure indoor air quality and a variety of parameters. And then we have software solutions to help you analyze that data, make the most of it, understand the trends in the building, and ultimately help you to improve your indoor environment. So our goal is really to help companies create or achieve low carbon, healthy buildings. So quick intro to us and quick intro to the agenda today. We'll be looking at sort of a quick overview of well. I know there's a lot of people on the call that are familiar with well. We've got some well APs. There are some people that are less familiar, so we'll provide a brief overview of well. Really, Eric is going to be doing all the talking today, so I'm just providing the introduction for him here. He's the expert. Once we've talked about well, we'll jump into really the performance rating itself, and then spend some time on continuous monitoring pathways. There's a lot of really big changes and what I think are amazing upgrades that allow continuous monitoring to provide a lot more value to everybody. So Eric will be talking about that, and we'll end up with a Q&A. So with that, I will hand it over to Eric.
Thanks a lot, Liam. I really appreciate it. Today we'll be talking about the well performance rating, one of the newest ratings and programs that IWBI has created over the last 8 months and officially launched in end of Q1 of this year. But before I get into the newest rating, I'd like to first provide a level set on the WELL building standard and how IWBI ratings and certifications can really fit into any organization's roadmap for improving health and well-being. So recent shifts in the market have really inspired companies to holistically address health across their organizations, including the prioritization of human and social capital performance, health and safety, and other solutions to drive employee retention, recruitment, productivity, and engagement. The evidence is clear. Healthy people means better performance. Companies that focus on health and safety as a core pillar of their culture are likely to have a competitive advantage in the marketplace, and this is catching the attention of business leaders and investors alike. In fact, a recent study that modeled the performance of health and safety focused companies found that portfolios with higher scores on the Corporate Health Achievement Awards performed higher than the S&P. Companies that achieved the threshold scores for health and safety had a return of 333% relative to 105% return on the S&P 500. At IWBI, we've noticed this trend too. Our clients report significant gains from WELL programs. In Cundall's WELL certified workplace, employee absenteeism dropped by 19% in just 1 year after certification. In CBRE's Toronto and Vancouver WELL certified workplaces, total employee turnover rate has fallen by almost a third, and the hiring rate for new talent has doubled. And finally, at Landsec's WELL certified workspace, productivity rose by 30% after achieving certification. If the past year has shown us anything, it's that demands and expectations are shifting from the boardroom to the supply chain and everywhere in between. In fact, a Gallup poll suggests that 70% of workers returning to the office want to know what's been done to make them safer when they walk through that door. In a Deloitte study, 73% of CFOs in Fortune 1000 report that they feel the pressure to act on climate change and social justice issues from 3 or more stakeholder groups, clients being on the top mentioned. More than 70% of millennials are using ESG factors to guide their investment decisions. So in the rapidly changing world, the companies who are winning the future start with protecting and prioritizing their core asset, really the health and happiness of their people. So where does WELL come in? WELL is really a tool designed to help organizations answer the question, what can you do to put the health of your people first? WELL applies the science of how physical and social environments affect human health, well-being, and performance. Developed over 10 years and backed by the latest scientific research, WELL outlines key building level and organizational strategies that can help you do so much, such as addressing record levels of burnout, create a workplace culture that normalizes conversations about mental health and provides support to those who need it, create a culture of belonging, embed diversity, equity, and inclusion best practices into your cultures, your organization's DNA. Win the war on talent, attract and retain the best people and increase employee productivity and engagement, and get back to business with confidence. Demonstrate your commitment to health and safety during the next phase of the pandemic. Here at IWBI, we've been setting the standard for what health leadership looks like for over a decade. Today, we're at the center of a global demand surge for health solutions, with 2,000 plus companies, including 96 of Fortune 500, adopting our leading global standard, WELL, as an evidence-based roadmap for scaling health across their organizations. Whether organizations are looking to apply WELL at a single location, multiple locations, or at scale across an organization, WELL unites around the shared vision for health and provides a roadmap to execute against it effectively and drive results for their business. It's agile and able to support the goals and challenges of leading organizations in today's landscapes. Ratings and certifications are great opportunities for organizations to begin their journeys. Ratings are targeted health achievements around specific themes like health, safety, performance, and equity. They can be earned as a standalone designation or as a milestone towards single building certification or an enterprise commitment. As we continue to expand our rating suite, first with health safety and now with performance rating, we want organizations to view ratings as a stepping stone to a broad WELL commitment or additive to engaging with WELL at scale. Certification is our most comprehensive approach to single building. It covers all 10 categories in WELL and has robust requirements for achievement. And finally, WELL at scale is the most cost-effective way to apply WELL across multiple locations. Subscribers gain access to all that WELL has to offer, including unlimited certifications and ratings, as well as concierge technical service and strategic ESG and marketing support. Whichever programs organizations choose, they're exposed to one standard, WELL, and our method for putting people first in business making and culture. The WELL performance rating provides a roadmap for organizations to measure building performance is verified through on-site testing, occupant surveys, and sensor technology. Performance measurements cover air, light, and water quality, as well as thermal and acoustic comfort. Surveys connect building performance with experience of the people inside, so organizations can make smarter decisions for their employees and businesses. Performance verification has always been a hallmark of the WELL building standard. Beyond adding rigor to WELL certification, the data and metrics realized through this process help leaders understand how their spaces are performing, and for some parameters, how spaces are performing over time. In recognition of advances in technology, the rating expands on traditional on-site testing methods with new enhanced pathways for monitoring certain parameters through sensor technologies. We've looked at cutting-edge technologies across health and well-being industry, from continuous air quality sensors to motion and occupant density monitoring systems. Despite the plethora of exciting technology systems we've came across, not all of them were quite ready for to be implemented on a large scale. We focus on carving out continuous monitoring pathways for technologies that are now becoming more widely adopted, such as air and thermal comfort sensing technologies. When we developed the WELL performance rating, we really had our eyes set on three goals. The first one, which is to meet the strong market demand for solution to building performance transparency and put that data into practice, such as for return to work strategies or for ESG reporting. We also wanted to shift the continuous monitoring landscape, which we know to be strong for environmental monitoring, to start incorporating health and well-being metrics into ongoing reporting. And three, to align industry professionals and stakeholders around a common set of best practices related to the specifications, installation, and calibration of sensor technologies. So we've really seen an explosion of new sensor technologies over the last decade, which really has a profound impact on all aspects of everyday life. I mean, think about fitness trackers and how far they've come in terms of adoption and cost and the impact they've had on human health. This is true for environmental sensors as well, which is great to help people understand air quality. However, manufacturers and integrators have taken different approaches to monitoring the space due to the lack of alignment and standardization in the industry. For example, how many sensors should be placed in a space? Or is this sensor technology accurate enough? What is the level of dust to be considered unhealthy? I'm sure Liam and the Kaitera team definitely know about these and have pondered on these questions themselves quite a bit. But this leads to fragmentation, confusion in the industry when people are approaching it very different ways. And it was in this transformative moment over the last 2 years that we saw a strong need to align the industry around a standard set of benchmarks for health. It's for this reason that we chose to set up the Performance Advisory to empower a community of technology partners to shape the rating alongside us and partner as ambassadors of long-term adoption and implementation of sensor technology. So let's dive into the specifics behind our newest rating, WELL Performance. So performance rating is really a subset of WELL version 2 features organized into 7 themes you can see on the right here. Indoor air quality, water quality management, lighting measurements, thermal conditions, acoustic performance, environmental monitoring, and occupant experience. There are a total of 33 features currently for WELL performance rating, and that can certainly grow as it evolves. Environmental monitoring is a new theme introduced, which clumps together features that require monitoring of certain parameters, but does not require that projects meet certain threshold requirements. Most of these features in this category existed in the air and thermal comfort concepts in WELL version 2, but also include a few water requirements. The intent of these features in environmental monitoring is really to encourage project teams to regularly monitor and audit the indoor environment. Occupant experience in the bottom here is another theme unique to the performance rating. But again, the requirements still originate from the WELL version 2 standard and specifically revolve around surveys that are prescribed in community and thermal comfort concepts. How did we arrive at this feature set? At IWBI, we're really committed to partnering and leading with with leading companies and service providers to establish consistent practices for the industry and global standard for health. The development process for ratings spanned months and months of research, deep technical work, a lot of rework, and conversations with our community. At IWBI, we're all about co-creation, and we're so grateful to the experts and leaders who help us shape the rating that come from all across the globe so that features are applicable and achievable to projects in all regions. Well version 2 features were initially screened by IWBI's standard development team and selected for the rating based on their ability to, one, address the measurement of monitoring of indoor environments across key IQ parameters, and two, address the collection and analysis of occupant experience insights. Then we relied on concept advisories, performance testing organizations, enterprise provider, and over a dozen technology providers to establish the updates required to the feature set. They helped us bring the rating from an idea to program and made sure that we took into consideration all perspectives of the different industries and partners that Well touches and influences. Of the 204 Well version 2 feature parts, 33 features met one or more of the criteria for inclusion in the performance rating. Verified performance. Well, performance verification has really been at the heart of Well since its inception in 2014, and is really at the core of performance rating. There are three main feature types in Well performance rating, all based on performance. Number one, on-site testing conducted by traditional on-site performance testing agents, which is really the bread and butter of performance verification. This includes testing with laboratory handle equipment for air measurements, water quality, light, and acoustic measurements. Many features can also now be verified through data collected from permanently installed continuous monitors. For example, Well version 2 introduced a pathway to meet VOC air requirements through monitoring data instead of lab-based results. We've expanded on these monitoring pathways, continuous monitoring pathways, which I'll get into in just a bit. And lastly, again, we have a set of performance features that don't rely on measurement devices to gauge performance, but rather data obtained from occupant responses and engagement. So some of the nuts and bolts of the rating are over here on the left. Again, there'll be 33 features at launch, and these features are all existing requirements from Well version 2 feature parts. So nothing new. We've carved out some new verification methods, but those trickle back down to version 2 as well. Of these 33 features, projects must achieve 21 features to obtain the ratings. All our ratings play by the same rules, and this has been reflected in our Unified Ratings Guidebook. So there's really only a single level of achievement in Well rating. So there's no gold or platinum and bronze that you see in full Well certification. It's really all or nothing. Additionally, there's no preconditions to really offer flexibility for project teams on how they want to achieve the rating and which strategies they want to implement. There are no points or tiered awards, again, all or nothing. And there's some tiered features with multiple points in version 2 that have been transferred into performance rating, and those will be rewarded as an innovation feature if a project meets the more stringent threshold. Ratings must be renewed annually, whereas Well certification must be done in 3-year cycles. And one of the great things about Well ratings is the simplified documentation review process. Projects submit all documents together instead of in stages, as is the case for full certification. And once submitted, projects still undergo 2 rounds of review, so preliminary and final, to be able to correct or provide any updates or clarifications during the review process. One of the key parts of Well is our proven method for implementation. Tested and vetted by over 35,000 projects across the globe, our approach is adaptable to meet the needs of each organization and support long-term brand leadership and impact. How does it work? So first step, organizations really need to define the health and well-being goals and select specific strategies in the Well performance rating that best supports their business needs. When it comes to tracking performance, organizations can leverage a combination of on-site testing, sensor technology, and occupant surveys to map real-time performance results to occupant experience data. This on-demand performance tracking helps streamline review timelines and expedite the overall process. And upon achievement, organizations can leverage insights and conversations with investors and stakeholders. WELL provides resources to embed outcomes into annual ESG and CSR reporting to really help organizations quantify the efforts, specifically around the H and S in ESG. So next are some of the more technical juicy bits that we've added in terms of adding in sensor technology and continuous monitoring pathways. And I see a couple of questions coming in. We'll be sure to answer them towards the end of this webinar. We have quite a bit of time, so we can certainly get to those afterwards. So one of the ways the WELL performance rating is recognized evolution in the industry is through new involved continuous monitoring pathways. Why are we doing so much work integrating sensor technology into WELL? Well, building and human performance is really dynamic and can quickly change. Air quality can be impacted by seasonal wildfires. I'm in LA, so we see that here quite a bit. Water quality can deteriorate after periods of prolonged inactivity. And acoustic dynamics can really change with reduced occupancy. These changes can significantly impact performance, yet may go unnoticed with spread out, elongated testing intervals. We see this gap and see continuous monitoring technologies as a way to fill it by providing more environmental data to help projects better understand how their spaces are performing. Like in WELL version 2, WELL ratings are meant to evolve alongside technology, evidence, and the industry at large. We understand that some sensor types are more mature than others, so IWBI will only introduce continuous monitoring pathways, the feature requirements, once we see that technology is ready. One of the biggest updates and changes we've made that impacts WELL performance rating in version 2, some of them are noted on the left, and I've already mentioned this, but I'm really excited for this. The addition of more continuous monitoring pathways for certain performance features. We've also added in alternative and innovation pathways for novel technologies. So if something that's not prescribed currently, we're very open to projects proposing new technologies. And 3, a dedicated continuous monitoring section in the performance verification guidebook. Most of the monitoring pathways we've carved out so far are for air and thermal comfort features, as these parameters and themes have been monitored by touches the longest. And I'd say most ready for prime time. So you see PM 2.5, 10, ozone, carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide threshold requirements can now be monitored and achieved with continuous sensors. We've also carved out brand new threshold-based ventilation pathways so that projects can demonstrate adequate ventilation by meeting carbon dioxide thresholds. And I'll talk about this a little bit later as well. We've also encouraged project teams to submit alternative and innovation paths, as I mentioned, that measure performance in a novel way not yet covered in the rating. And we've added a whole new continuous monitoring section that consolidates technical requirements. The technical requirements were getting really hairy, and as we were updating the requirements in the feature language, so we've carved out a whole new section that makes it a little bit easier to access and easier to refer to. Something I wanted to highlight was the last point over here, and that these efforts are really to help promote continuous monitoring pathways, but really aren't intended to replace traditional on-site measurements and performance testing agents. Each verification method has its own benefits and limitations, and we're really just making continuous monitoring more accessible with these updates for project teams in the hope that they can adapt a combination of verification methods. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier. One of the biggest additions we've made are for ventilation supply and carbon dioxide measurements, which is addressed in features PA 7, 8 in performance rating, and AO3 and 6 in version 2. Previously, projects needed an engineer sign-off to ensure that a project was designed to certain ventilation codes, such as ASHRAE 62 or CIPC requirements. We've now carved out a performance pathway that requires projects meet a certain CO2 threshold, which is an indicator for ventilation. The threshold is either absolute or it must be under a certain level above outdoors. And you can see that over here. As I mentioned earlier, we've consolidated technical requirements into the performance verification guidebook. We've had sensor technologies in well features since the first one launched in version 1 launched in 2014. But as we built upon that, we needed to add more guidance and requirements on sensor technology, and that's gotten kind of hairy in the features. So what we've done in 2022 and with performance rating is we've really trimmed the fat off and just updated what the requirements are, and then put in the technical details in the performance verification guidebook. We've also added in a verified by, a new verification method. So with the newest update in both well performance rating and well version 2, projects that can utilize sensors now have a new verification method. So instead of just performance tests previously, it is performance test or sensor data. And the list you can see over here is really an overview of the parameters within well performance rating version 2, which can be found in the again in the continuous monitoring section of the performance verification guidebook. Some of these pathways already existed within version 2, but we've added the new pathways in bold and blue that allow projects to verify performance through sensor data. And I think this is really big, especially with this group that may touch and work with sensors more so than some of the other community well communities. I think this is really a welcome addition in today's environment more than ever, as people return to work and are hyper aware of their indoor environment and air quality concerns. Additionally, we've seen many teams in the past that have wanted to utilize air quality sensors for well projects, but honestly, the upfront costs and annual maintenance fees associated with monitoring systems, just to be awarded potentially 2 features in well, didn't make sensor implementation quite cost effective. So now project teams can install sensors and potentially achieve 8 features in version 2, and even more so in performance rating, just by installing sensors and meeting certain threshold requirements. So it really makes sensor implementation much more attractive, which I think would be a really welcome addition, and promote people to utilize continuous sensors as a way to proactively monitor their space. Been talking about the performance verification guidebook in nauseam. I spent a lot of time and sweat and tears developing this, so I'm really excited. But I think it's a really useful tool. We've updated it and create a continuous monitoring section that consolidates sensor requirements. I've highlighted some of the biggest updates here. On the left, the first one is we've really added guidance on placement of ceiling mounted sensors. The breathing zone is still preferred, but ceiling mounted sensors now allowed with some caveats and limitations. So the ceiling height is limited. So really you can't have a sensor, in a vaulted ceiling expected to be representative of the breathing zone. Projects can't utilize displacement ventilation. And we request that projects utilizing ceiling mounted sensors are designed to newer ASHRAE 62 ventilation standards, which typically indicates better mixed air. And the goal of this new addition is to help reduce installation costs. Installing in walls are, it could be much more, it could be representative of, the ambient breathing zone. At the same time, it gets really, really expensive. Hiding walls and conduits inside walls, and it's very intrusive and can sometimes double and triple the cost of installing sensors. Installing in ceilings, drop ceilings is usually much easier and can help streamline that process. We've also expanded guidance on monitoring density, taking into consideration the project size. So it doesn't, again, it used to be quite cost prohibitive for large and multi-asset projects. Previously, projects required one monitor for 325 square meters. Now the density changes based on the size of the project, and the density could be one monitor per 325 square meters, 500 square meters, or one per 1,000 square meters based on how large the project is. We've also clarified that field calibration for continuous monitoring is allowed, provided that that process still produces results that meet sensor technical specifications. This is to take into consideration some sensor systems that don't have typical like annual mill-in calibration models, and still ask that project teams still calibrate air quality sensors annually and thermal comfort parameters and sensors every 3 years. We've also aligned reporting frequencies to 15 minutes except for radon, which is still hourly. Previously, reporting requirements based on different parameters varied. And we just want to align that for simplicity, but also to get more a higher level of granularity in IAQ measurements. Hourly data, it doesn't provide a lot of, it provides good information, but air quality changes so fast that we really feel that 15-minute intervals it provides a lot more insight. Think about, lunch hour. People go in and out for lunchtime, and air quality can change really quickly during that hour. But if you only have that one set of data over that hour, you lose a lot of those details. For initial award of the rating, data over the initial calendar month, one calendar month during occupied hours must be submitted to demonstrate compliance. And upon renewal, a year of data is required. A couple more updates to the performance verification guidebook and sensor placement. We've added a bit more guidance on where to place monitors. So we've added, what types of spaces and HVAC systems to take into consideration, HVAC zones, bases of building, occupied space types. We were careful not to specifically say, a ratio of rooms or a certain percentage of rooms. We understand that spaces are so dynamic and very, personalized nowadays. So we just wanted to clarify what spaces should be represented without setting hard requirements. And we also introduced a alternative monitoring density, a relaxed sensor density, if for large open spaces, if they can demonstrate that the air is sufficiently mixed. So with that, one of the other biggest updates we've made is a sensor data template. We developed a standardized sensor template, which is, we feel that a tool that can really help streamline the submission process. We're asking and working with continuous monitoring providers and sensor systems to output sensor data in a unified format. This is easier for submission for the project team, analysis on IWBI's end, and analysis, for projects as well. Much of the data is already present on many current monitoring systems. It's just the need to kind of tweak it and align the template to match our requirements. When we've worked with a lot of project teams, one of the biggest headaches for projects was submitting sensor data is really cleaning up that data and submitting it in a unified format that grabs sensor measurements from potentially multiple sensors. Cleaning that up can be really, really time consuming. We're really hoping that this template will ease that and fill that gap that we've seen. In addition to the sensor data template, we've also included templates to submit floor plans. Again, to streamline that submission process, because project teams would ask in the past, how to submit it, and people were doing it in very different ways. So people would scramble to really, do it their own way. We've tried to create a template so that people are familiar with the requirements. In addition, we also added, it's just a snapshot on the right, but we've added a compliance calculator to really help teams understand whether they're meeting feature requirements before submittal. So projects that utilize and have continuous monitoring data in a unified format, in the format that we've requested, can literally punch in, punch calculate, and for that period of time with that monitoring data, can calculate whether that project is meeting compliance during that period. And it's really informative for product teams, but we really wanted this process and these calculations and how we determine whether a project meets feature requirements to be transparent, right? So all the formulas, everything is transparent on the calculator for everyone to see. And with all these updates, we've been talking with Kytera and other monitoring providers as well. They're already beginning to output and work on ways to output sensor data in this format to make it easier for practitioners to submit sensor data. So with that said, that was a lot of me babbling, but I really hope that these updates to the performance verification guidebook, the introduction of well performance rating, but also these updates and continuous pathways that we've added into well version 2 as well, will be really, really helpful and useful to everyone on this call. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. So yeah, just a big thanks for walking us through all that, and maybe a couple points I would share, because Eric just sort of breezed through them, saying, now there's a sensor data template, and this is really helpful. I just want to emphasize how some of the things that Eric shared today really are like game changing if you've been submitting projects for well or working on projects. I remember our team spending a very significant amount of time helping some customers prepare their data and format their data for submission, simply because of the complexity, especially as the project scaled and there were many, many devices. Just trying to organize that was pretty complex. And so really excited to see that be in a standardized format that ultimately you'll just be able to export from the, for example, the Kytera dashboard or whatever data provider you might be using. Also, major props for the changes to the performance guidebook. I know it was just shared in the chat here. There's a link to it that was shared. So if you haven't downloaded it, you can definitely go and grab it there. It is really, really clear, and I think just sort of sharing personally, a major improvement from the way the information was previously organized, which was a little bit over here and a little bit over there. So these are major, major, major improvements. Someone's saying, I don't see the link here. If you scroll up a few, there is a message. You can access the digital version of the guidebook here, and there's a link. And all right, with that, I think we will jump into the Q&A. We have a lot of questions. I'm not sure we will be able to get through everything. So I think we'll just start up at the top. There's a question from Richard about having two IAQ sensors, which are essentially in the same location. One is connected to the BMS. One is a standalone IAQ sensor not connected to the BMS, but it has a display on it. When you're submitting reports, the two sensors are next to each other. Do you have to use one of them? Can you choose which one to use for the data source? The readings might be slightly different. I think that's Eric. That's a question for you.
Sure, absolutely. Great question, Richard. And it's awesome that a project has so many sensors. You can never get enough data until you want to crunch it sometimes. But it's great. The more monitors, the more you can baseline and understand your indoor environment. In terms of which monitor, or if multiple monitors or sensors meet, measuring the same parameters or slightly varied. We'll take a look at the sensor, the data that the team sends over to IWBI and performance and the reviewers. We have expanded in the performance verification guidebook as well, the technical specifications and requirements for each pollutant and parameter. So a project that utilizes continuous monitoring would need to use a sensor that meets the technical specifications. And that was revamped as well with the release of performance rating. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that guide and submit the data from the sensors that meet the performance verification guidebook to ensure that it meets the accuracy and specifications that we request. So I hope that helps. Take a look at the performance verification guidebook. There's some really nice new details for sensor technology in there. We have another question from Lauren Campfield. What is the typical time frame to achieve certification? That's a great question. So with WELL certification, so WELL Building Standard version 2, there's documentation review, which requires review of a lot of different, procedural documents, policy documents, as well as building kind of blueprint documents, as well as, sometimes even sensor data. And after that's done, there's on-site performance verification done by a testing agent. That process for certification can typically takes 3 to 6 months, sometimes even longer. It's a very robust process. The certification process is really robust and comprehensive. With WELL performance rating, one of the biggest differences is that it's all performance-based. So less of the policy documentation and processes, we focus much more for performance rating on, okay, does it meet these thresholds and these indicators? And there's only one really review process, which is reviewing the submitted performance data. And during initial rating review, it's really a month of that performance data. So it would probably take a little bit longer. Project teams would probably work with testing agents, organizations to first baseline their air quality and their environmental quality, and then get a better understanding, and then maybe do some more continuous improvements and verification monitoring. But that would probably take 2 to 3 months for renewal for ratings, for all performance rating. It could take a little bit longer if a project wanted to implement surveys as well, but that process is much quicker for ratings versus certification. Next question. Let's see. Can an overview be provided for the improvements in sensors for particulate matter and VOCs that led to the inclusion of continuous monitoring pathways for these criteria within WELL? Historically, PM sensors have been notoriously inaccurate, and VOC monitoring has not been able to address the known health impacts of mixtures of VOCs and sensor accuracy for individual VOCs. Liam, it looks like you want to answer this.
So, I'm happy. I can share some, as a sensor manufacturer, some thoughts on the accuracies, sort of answering some of those parts of the question. I think, Eric, if you've got thoughts about sort of from IWI's perspective, maybe what led to some of the changes, definitely feel free to answer sort of that half of the question.
Yeah.
So just sort of coming from an air quality monitoring perspective, I think it's important to look at each one individually. PM, VOC, COT, these are all very different, and each one needs to be looked at individually. I'll maybe just talk a little bit about PM 2.5. There has been, over the past 5 years, there's been an order of magnitude improvement in the precision accuracy of devices that are measuring particulate matter. If you look at all the research that's come out in the past, really the past 2-3 years, you can get excellent results for measurement of particulates using what are sometimes called low-cost sensors, which is really anything under $5,000-$10,000, and that is what's made it possible to use continuous monitoring and really get extremely reliable results. Now, these solutions are not foolproof. Calibration is still incredibly important, and not all sensors are made equal. That's why, for example, you have RESET certification, third-party certification for air quality sensors. RESET, I guess I would note, is also sort of listed as a criteria or a pathway to have a sensor be fulfilling criteria for in the new performance guidebook. And so definitely not any sensor off the shelf is necessarily going to do a good job, but there is the technology out there to be able to provide accurate readings consistently in a continuous manner, provided, of course, that the sensor is properly calibrated during the manufacturing process, and it's kept calibrated over time. So maybe I'll just stop there and hand it over to Eric, so you can answer the sort of IWI's perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is still a quickly evolving industry, but we've seen this space move really quickly and improve quite a bit in the last few years. It's really exciting. Actually, I just had a air sensor conference 2 weeks ago in Pasadena, where ASTM, South Coast Air Quality Management District, with their AQ Spec team that does sensor verification validation, they are releasing a monitoring calibration and testing protocol in the next few months, which is really exciting. And that will help align even further kind of all these sensors and how well they perform and whatnot. And that's really that's really exciting. In terms of what we've done to ensure that they are somewhat playing on the sensors are at least outputting similar measurements and whatnot. With PM 2.5, we asked that project teams note their density factor, whether or not it's pre-programmed or individually identified for the project space. Again, there may be some limitations, especially with acute pollutant, wildfire events or whatnot. But typically, particulate density. Having project teams send that out, we're at least able to baseline where everyone is. We've done something similar with VOCs as well. We've set the default value for kind of ppb to micrograms as the Mulhall et al. VOC mix, and have asked project teams to calibrate using isobutylene. Not isobutylene, ethanol. Why not isobutylene? It's because most of the sensors, VOC sensors utilized in these indoor air quality monitors, utilize metal oxide technology as opposed to PID sensors, which usually use isobutylene. So that is what we've kind of set as the baseline. Now, if a project has done individual speciation and done a VOC analysis in their actual space and has identified a specific coefficient, we encourage project teams to use that, but have tried to even that playing field and make sure that the calibration factors and whatnot are somewhat aligned by having default values for those coefficients. So I hope that has helped clarify some of these, some of these questions. I know there's more than just Jeremy's. But I hope that's answered some of your questions. There's another one on pricing details, which will be available. That is already online, and I can link that and provide some details after the call. Fees are very similar to health safety rating. If any of y'all are in the loop and have worked with health safety rating, in terms of on-site testing, now this is going to really be contingent on the performance testing organizations that you all work with. We have a network of approved performance testing organizations, and they have their own pricing. And we encourage you all to reach out to them. We can get in touch. We can get you connected with some as well. If your team is looking at meeting well performance rating through sensing technologies, mainly, you can work with the Kyteras or other monitoring companies to identify installation costs and sensor costs. But yeah, it's really open to the market, and whoever wants to do the testing and the monitoring. So yeah.
So just a quick sort of heads up that they will probably be ending this on the hour. So there's about 5 minutes remaining. There's still quite a lot of questions. So a big thank you to everybody for submitting these. Also want to note that if you have submitted these with your name, so not anonymously, if we don't get to your question, I think we'll try to get back to people afterwards. There's a question here that I think is probably really, I think you touched on, Eric, but I just want to make sure there's an answer for everyone, because it's quite an important one, I think, which is, what is the required performance timeframe in which data needs to be collected prior to submission?
So that is for initial for initial performance rating, it's 1 month, and then upon renewal, that previous year of data.
Great, easy answer. Hopefully that was helpful. And then we've got another question here, just to make sure, I think this one will be helpful to make sure that everybody's on the same page about understanding a lot of the information that was shared today. Question: as somebody new to well, can you explain the difference between the well performance verification guidebook and the well performance rating document?
The difference? Is that right?
Yes, the difference between the well performance verification guidebook and the performance rating document.
Okay, so the well performance rating is the document, the digital standard, the digital document, which can be found online, is completely free. And that spells out the specific requirements, thresholds, if there's policies and procedures for particularly, well version 2, that's all listed on there. Performance verification guidebook is all about the technical nuances and the requirements for performance-based features. Basically everything that you need for performance-based features, where to place sampling points or sensors, the density, their location, their height, specifications for analytical techniques, for lab-based measurements, for direct read devices and sensors, the range, their calibration periods, all of that. That is in the performance verification guidebook. And the newest addition to the performance verification guidebook is a dedicated continuous monitoring section that can be found, I believe, on pages 34 to 39, which has all the juicy tidbits on continuous monitors.
Perfect. So we've got probably time for one last short question. There's still several there. Eric, is there one in there that you think you can get through in the last minute or so?
Is it possible to achieve the rating without having to hire a performance testing organization? Yes. So we've made well performance rating, when we've selected the 33 features and having that threshold of 21 to meet the rating, we really designed it to be a really flexible rating. So we see kind of two extremes that we don't see most projects going for, but more balanced. But one extreme could be if a project wanted to utilize all sensors, provided that they install sensors and meet the thresholds and implement surveys, they could potentially get just about 21 features to meet well performance rating. Alternatively, if a project wanted to go through the more traditional on-site testing with a testing agent organization, they could meet well performance rating through that as well. Those are two extremes, but we really see a balanced projects utilizing a combination to meet performance rating, but have kind of designed those two extremes for projects that want to go, all in on, one or all in on another. So I hope that helps.
Perfect.
And yeah.
Yeah, so we're probably 30 seconds away from wrap up. So there are some other questions. As I said, those that left sort of their name, I think we'll try to reach out to you with an answer to anything that we didn't manage to get through today. But this is really informative, and I just want to say a big thank you to Eric for spending the time with all of us today. We had a lot of people on the call and a lot of really good questions, still some unanswered ones. So this was super informative, and a big thank you to Eric for taking the time to walk us through all of this.
Thank you so much, Liam. Thank you everyone for your time this today, this hour. Feel free to reach out. I'm sure Liam will be able to send out a follow-up, and feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or through email, and we can stay in touch.
Absolutely. And a big thanks to all of our attendees who participated today. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.